Peace, peace, greetings to you all. It's your brother Naheem, BKA Lord Abba, aka Mr. Just the Facts. Just the Facts. Family, as you come in, hit the like button. Make sure you hit the share button. If you are not subscribed to the channel, do so. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell icon next to it. Become a part of the notification nation, so that you'll know every time that we either go live or drop content on Be the Power Media channel. So tonight we're going to have a discussion about the Freedmen and why we resurrected this name and why it makes the most sense. Naturally, we're going to get into some research, some history, etc. But I want to set this off. Peace, Sister Riri. I see you in the building. I want to set this off with some real. It's so funny, Josh, that you and I are on here right now because we started doing this last year around, and I wouldn't say the same date, but maybe a week or two from now last year. It was just you and I doing the test run for BTP.
Yeah,
I'm gonna pull it up and see what the exact date was actually. But yeah, man. So the other brothers should be on soon, and I want to start. I want to get into some things first. But if you want to say something real quick, Josh.
Nah, man. It's good. To be on the program. It's always good to be on the program. It's always a pleasure to be able to speak to the people and to bring some much needed information and perspective. So to think about it being a year, it's been a hell of a year,
Hell yeah. Definitely. So look, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna set it off. I want to preface this conversation with some current statistics. Let me see. John, I got a little bit of feedback coming through from your speakers.
Let me mute up.
All right. Peace, brother Corey. I see you. Shout out to the BTP mods. Our mods do a wonderful job at holding us down, man. I want to give y'all a shout out. Shout out to Sister Riri. Shout out to brother Corey. Shout out Sister Cynthia. Shout out to all the mods. Anybody I missed, shout out, man. Shout out to y'all. All right, we need to resurrect this particular institution again because many people have said that it failed, right? That not necessarily Reconstruction. Well, yeah, Reconstruction, but the Freedmen's Bureau failed. And it wasn't that it failed. It was that it was poorly mismanaged and it was destroyed by greed and racism. Our people, for instance, were putting money into the Freedmen's Bank and the Freedmen Savings Bank. And that's all it was a savings bank. You couldn't get a loan. The only thing you can do is put your money into it. That money was being used by greedy investors to fund railroad tracks. Dr. Darity and A. Kirsten Mullen touch on that in the book From Here to Equality as well. I think they touch on that. I might be confusing my books. I know Mercer Baradaran touches Baradaran. I think I'm saying that correct. Touches on it in her book as well. The color of money, and I think that this era of freedmen was important in the sense that we didn't get a chance to become fulfilled Americans. That was the purpose of this particular institution. That was the purpose of the name. And we're going to get into that a little bit later. But I just want to open up. I haven't really opened up in a minute. I want to talk about some things before we get into it. Our people are incarcerated in state prisons across this country at more than 5 times the rate than white people, and at least 10 times the rate in 5 different states. According to the FBI, our people, the descendants of freedmen, accounted for 52.4% of all homicide offenders in 2018, with whites being 43.1%. And when you look at the population of white people compared to black people, it's a staggering difference for us to have the highest incarceration rates per capita, right? If you were to measure out per capita that 52.4% for our people and that 43.1% for white folks, it's not even close as it seems, this 9-point difference. It's not close at all. And it's not that we're just murdering each other, it's also that we're doing the murdering at the highest rate. This is because we are in communities that are impoverished. I mean, if you lived in a poor community, as I have, and you've had mice and all of that stuff, when the mice get hungry, they don't care if humans are out. They're going to come out and try to find some food after a while. It is what it is. And I'm not comparing our people to mice. I'm just saying that the conditions that we were forced us into this animalistic survival mode that we've been in since emancipation. According to the U.S. National Library of Medicine and the National Institute of Health, Black women have been experiencing induced abortions at a rate nearly 4 times that of white women for at least 3 decades, and likely much longer. The impact in years of potential life loss, given abortion's high incidence and racially skewed distribution, indicates that it is the most demographically consequential occurrence for the minority population. The science community has refused to engage on the subject, and the popular media has essentially ignored it. In the current unfolding environment, there may be no better metric for the value of Black lives. So according to the U.S. National Library of Medicine, National Institute of Health, the best metric for the value of Black lives is predicated upon its numbers that they have seen when it comes to abortion among our women, right? And that I want to bring you all to something, because I think that this is important as we move forward. Matter of fact, let's go here real quick. Let me pull up something real quick. I'm gonna let the bros come in, but I just wanted to do a little opening real quick so that everybody could get an understanding of why we need the Freedmen institutions established again. So this is number of murder victims in the United States in 2019 by race / ethnicity and gender. You'll see that when it comes to all of the different ethnic groups, or races rather, it's incomparable. Blacks have the highest. The only number that is higher is not Hispanic or Latino, right? So blacks have 7,484 homicides murdered in 2019, while not Hispanic or Latinos have 8,081. Now, the difference is when it comes to our people whom are being called Black here, this is just one ethnic group. Not Hispanic or Latino is a grouping of different ethnic groups. And this comes from Statista.com for those that want to know where I'm using the source from. I want to share something else, and we're going to let my bros come in and we'll dig deeper into this conversation, because I believe that this is important, right? This is the American Freedmen's Inquiry Commission. It says the American Freedmen's Inquiry Commission was charged by U.S. Secretary of War Edwin McMaster Stanton in March 1863. That date is important. With investigating the status of the slaves and former slaves who were freed by the Emancipation Proclamation. So there were those who were freed by the Emancipation Proclamation, but all states did not honor it. It wasn't until 1865 with the passage of the 13th Amendment that we get full freedom in the United States of America insofar as slavery is concerned. So in 1863, they came up with this commission and they created a final report in 1864. I'm going to give a little background because I want to go into something. I want to show y'all what's going on with our people and how we are being intentionally boxed out and why we have to push to bring back the things that connect us to our ancestry in the United States of America, particularly being day one citizens. It says background. Commission members and staff traveled to the American South where they interviewed former slaves and Union field commanders to get a better grasp of the situation and of the quote unquote condition and capacity of freed slaves. Howe and his secretary also traveled to Canada West where thousands of former slaves had settled after gaining freedom in Canada. He visited their communities, interviewed freedmen and government officials, and noted their progress in a free country where they were enfranchised and their rights protected by the government. So, you see how powerful that is, that the freedmen that went to Canada were also a part of this study because the government was looking for ways on how to better assist those of us who were newly freed via the Emancipation Proclamation. We see this with Special Field Order 15 and where the United States government basically sat down with our freedmen ancestors and asked them what they want. And they said, we need some land, right? And this is where the concept of 40 acres and the mule came about. So it says, through its report, the commission recommended that the government help support freedmen through their transition to a free life. Their report was submitted to Congress and its findings debated. Its recommendations contributed to the passage by Congress of a bill authorizing formation of the Freedmen's Bureau to help manage the transition of freedmen to freedom. And like I said, we're going to touch on some of the etymology. Let me close that out. I want to bring up one more thing before I bring my brothers in. And that is this, right? That is this. We need to see the game that's being played but on our people by this government. It's been being played for the longest. New York Times article. Where's the publishing date at? March 4th. So that's today. This was sent to me. Shout out to the OG Otis. He sent this to me. Treasury to invest $9 billion in minority communities. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is making community development financial institutions central to achieving an inclusive economy. We got a sister pictured here. Her sign reads Black owned. The happy cork. It says Sunshine Force at her wine and spirits store, Happy Cork in Brooklyn in November. Her store focuses on Black and other minority-owned labels. I'm not going to read this whole thing. I'm just going to read this opening. Washington. The Biden administration unveiled a plan on Thursday to invest $9 billion in minority communities, taking an initial step in fulfilling its promise to ensure that those who have been hit hardest by the pandemic, have access to loans as the economy recovers. The Treasury Department said it was opening the application process for its emergency capital investment program, which will provide a major infusion of funds to community development, financial institutions, and minority depository institutions as they look to step up lending. The effort is a priority of Treasury Secretary Janet L. Yellen, who has warned that the fallout from the pandemic is exacerbating inequality in the United States. So, they quotes her. And this is important, right? This sister's name is Sunshine Force out in Brooklyn. And I looked her up. And this is from a page that I'm reading from called dancewithmoney.com. I'm not going to do the screen share because I would have to go out and come back in. So let's read. She has on a Black Lives Matter shirt. And you know what? No, I got to show the visual. Let us show the visual. People need to see this. People need to see this. She has on the Black Lives Matter shirt. No, one of us, right? One of the sisters. All right, let's read though. Y'all can't see this because it's so tiny, but it says Sunshine Force, a native Brooklynite with St. Lucian parents, graduated with a fashion design degree while studying in Miami. St. Lucian parents. Now, let's stop this. Y'all have heard me share this story before about a woman that I did security for from St. Lucia. I was trying to purchase some dilapidated buildings. I was getting my credit up, doing everything that I was supposed to do to get these buildings, fix them up, rent them to those that had Section 8 vouchers, et cetera, et cetera. I kept hitting walls. And she said to me, Naheem, those of us that come from the islands, we seem to come right over here and set up and do good. She said, it seems like you American blacks are always running into problems. She said, it seems like the government just has something against you guys. And this woman was from St. Lucia. 2 laundromats. That was her second laundromat. I was doing security, and 2 daycare centers that she had opened up in the time that she had came from St. Lucia to Brooklyn. You see, that's why this story is important, because what these people are trying to do is gloss over us and make it a minority thing and an all-inclusive thing. We don't own businesses like that, those of us who are descendants of freedmen. We don't, because we never really had the access to the capital. That's why there was so many dilapidated Brooklyn buildings in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, when I stayed out there for a time. We could have fixed up our own neighborhood. The Jews came through and brought many of those buildings up for like $1 a piece. They were sitting there for decades. Brownstones, you see? So I just wanted to touch on that. I'm going to open it up to my brothers. Yeah, my bros, Josh, Ali, Brother Grimm. Salute to my BTP Freedmen correspondents. Come in, go in, let them know about this Freedmen history and why it is the best name for us moving forward insofar as our justice claim is concerned. Brother Josh, you want to set it off?
Yeah.
Now go ahead, Ali. Me and Ali, we gonna do it.
All right.
Now go ahead, brother.
Well, I would just say it's very simple. For me, it's very simple in the sense that 1865, the emancipation of our ancestors, the ones who were emancipated by the 13th Amendment at that particular point, those people are referred to as freedmen, right? And so this is an official thing. This is not just something that, as in terms of just socially used, right? You know how ADOS is just a social term, right? It's not really a term that's necessarily recognized federally. The bottom line is the very fact that you had the Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank. These are things that let you know that the government already recognizes this particular terminology, right? And the people who were emancipated along with their descendants, or the descendants of the freedmen, as we say, the sons and daughters of the freedmen and women, right, emancipated in 1865 by the 13th Amendment. These are the people who are who should be the rightful beneficiaries of what Dr. Darity rightfully calls a pure reparations program. And so, as we're talking about reparations with regard to um, a federal program from the United States government, Freedmen, to me, seems the most obvious terminology to use as it relates to our particular tribe of people and our particular plight here. So to me, it's just logical. It makes all of the sense in the world. At the same time, even as we're talking about Native Americans, the 5 civilized tribes who, held black people of African descent, people who even may be mixed Indian and African, if you will, those people are also citizens of the United States. You see what I'm saying? And so at the end of the day, I'm remember, we got to remember the Indian Citizenship Act that made all of these peoples citizens of the United States. And the fact is, the reparations program that we're talking about is not just for slavery, but it's also it's slavery, and it's also Jim Crow. You see what I'm saying? On top of the fact that we have to remember that the adoption of the institution of Negro chattel slavery by the so-called 5 civilized tribes was at the behest of the United States government. You see, and so that was one of the reasons why they were able to use this name. What they took on the name the 5 civilized tribes is because they adopted the ways of the European Christians who came here, and one of those things was not just Christianity, but one of those things was also the taking on of people of African descent as their slaves. And so when we talk about, for us, BTP and me in particular, when we talk about reparations for the people who are foundational to this thing called the United States of America, the United States had, as far as I'm concerned, based on the promises that were outlined and ingrained and enshrined in the founding document, the Declaration of Independence, which makes no distinction between color, national origin, former condition of servitude. It makes no distinction between race. This government, from the time of 1776 during its founding, had the responsibility to do right by the people who might have been free people at the time and taken as slaves, possibly by Indian tribes, or people who were taken as slaves that might have been free at the time of the foundation of the United States by Europeans in this country, or even other blacks who might have been slave owners. The fact of the matter is, the United States had as a government the obligation to protect the people, right? And knowing that the institution of chattel slavery was not in line with the Constitution of the United States, it was not in line with the state constitutions, as Mum Bet showed, it was not in line with the founding charters of the colonies, as we've shown on previous programs. It was obviously not in line with the common law of England, which was shown by the 1772 case, I believe it was. What's the name of that case from Britain, brothers? Y'all help me out, because that's
what is
always Somerset versus Stewart.
Somerset. That's
you
right.
know, and so in that case, in front of the courts, the court of the King's Bench, there, it was shown to not be consistent with the common laws of England, or what would be considered the constitutional laws of England, right? So the bottom line is, what we're talking about is the fact that the Declaration of Independence says that all men were born with certain unalienable rights, that being the right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. This government was founded on this particular document. Understand that these principles are very, very important as we move forward talking about a reparations program and what this country was obligated to do in terms of protecting those unalienable rights of the people who are foundational to this country, right? And they didn't do that for everybody. They only did it for certain people. So some people, as we've seen, even with, there was a movie, 12 Years a Slave, right? Just use this as an example. Where the brother, I think his name was Solomon Thorpe, if I'm not mistaken. Brother was free, right? But then they took him into slavery for 12 years. You see what I'm saying? And so that was a story of a man that was free who was taken into slavery. And we have numbers of cases like that. And so what I'm saying is, at the founding, from the time of 1776 forward, this country had the opportunity to do right by our people. But instead of doing right by our people, instead of protecting our people, as it says, governments are instituted for the purpose of protecting those unalienable rights, right? Our people fighting in the American Revolution. I was just reading a piece that talks about, I think it was something like around 6,000 of our people who fought in the American Revolution as patriots on the side of the patriots against Britain. This piece that I was reading not too long ago is talking about they finding out that it was even more than that. And they're doing the research to start digging up the numbers of people who actually did fight that didn't get recognized. I think it was something that I was reading about it might have been about Prince Hall, who was a foundational Black American, right? Some people, and Brother Grimm touched on this in terms of Prince Hall's actual national origin. Some people think it was Barbados, but the truth of the matter is Prince Hall was actually a foundational Black American born here in what is today the United States. The story about him being born in the Barbados is something that was contrived by someone, right? And so it's a story that, has been put out into the public. But the fact of the matter is, you have Black people at the founding of this thing called the United States. And some of these people were taken as slaves after that period by Europeans, by Native Americans, etc. And while this country was founded on the principles of liberty, right? And government being instituted to protect those liberties. And so when we're talking about reparations for the descendants of the people who are called freedmen, whether freedmen freedmen from slavery by Europeans in this country, Indians who have been made citizens of this country by the Indian Citizenship Act, etc. We're talking about slavery as well as Jim Crow. So us as this particular group of people who are the descendants of those people who were freed during that time period and freed into poverty and homelessness, known as freedmen, this reparations bill that is supposed to be for the descendants of those people should be designed to be a benefit for us, regardless of whether or not you come from Indian or European enslavement as citizens in this country, forced to go through Jim Crow. And I'll stop right there.
Indeed. Yeah, let's make that announcement. Matter of fact, brother, I'm glad Brother Corey Lorenz reminded us. Shout out to our BTP mod. Our brother Logic is going to have a debate with one of the panties, as we call them, the Pan-Africanists. Can reparations in America be achieved without Pan-Africanism? That date is Tuesday, March 9th. March 9th at 8 p.m.
Wow.
Can reparations in America be achieved without Pan-Africanism?
Can we touch on that a little? I don't want to jump the gun because I don't want to, be saying stuff that the brother might want to go into. But that is a
Yeah,
heck
because
of
he might back out if we touch on it too hard. He might the other brother might back out. So I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah.
If we just touch on it, we gonna have to. It's hard for us to touch on things without killing it. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah. So
but go ahead, Ali. If you want to bring up something in that regard, go ahead.
I just think that, and mind you, people got to realize this is a topic that the Panty came up with on its own. Like, this is what's really crazy to me. It's like, why would you pick a subject like that? But that's what he wanted to do, and can now, mind you, this is just a question because it's really rhetorical, right? And it's going, he's going to try to debate, and I'm going to tell you something, right? This is really crazy because he's going to try to debate from a position of no precedence, right? Understand what he's trying to do. This is like an almost impossible task that he has. From a position of no precedence, he's going to try to make relevant something that has never had any historical relevance in the space of reparations for the descendants of the freedmen in this country. He's going to try to say this is the only way that it can be done, as if he's standing on some kind of precedence, which we all know that there is no precedence for. It's an insane thing, but like I said again, this is a topic that he chose, right? This is something he chose himself, and he swears he's going to kill with this, right?
Well, look, as our brother Logic says, we're people that make a way out of no way, and I'm sure his real name is not Omawale Africa. He probably has a descendant of freedman name, so he's from the people that make a way out of no way. So let's just wait and see what kind of way he makes out of this no way type of debate.
True indeed. We shall see. We shall see. So looks like the brother got dropped off. But I just Josh, man, Grim, you could come in if you want. I just say that it's to me, it's like a exercise in futility, because remember, we used to. I was just saying, I used to have these debates with these Moors, and it's a particular Moorish group on Facebook that it's called Moorish Americans / Moors in America, right? I haven't been in that group in a long time, and the brother who created the group, I had left it a while ago, right? And the brother who created the group actually invited me back to the group or whatever, and so I had gone back in there just to see what's going on. It's kind of got dead after we all left. Us, myself, Naheem, and Logic. I don't even know if Grim was in that group or not, but I think he might have been. We all left that group because we was doing like a lot of we was really chopping a lot of those dudes up in that group, right? With the fallacious arguments that they would have been using. So it just reminds me of how we used to debate with these different Moors, and they would try to bring up all of these pseudo legal points, right? Because people who know anything about these Moors nowadays know that they're into what we call pseudo legal mumbo jumbo, right? That's what I call it, pseudo legal mumbo jumbo. It's ahistorical pseudo legal mumbo jumbo, and they think that this pseudo legal mumbo jumbo that they've adopted from European sovereign citizens is the thing that's going to make them win court battles when they're in the court. It's the thing that's going to make them win when they have police encounters during traffic stops, etc. It's the thing that's going to make them win against the Internal Revenue Service when they're being charged with tax evasion, whatever the case is. And so debating these guys, man, and they'd be in there going crazy, like, back and forth. And I would just say to them, something? You can argue with me on social media all day, right? You can actually do that, because basically what you're doing is you're arguing your opinion. You're arguing your opinion. I said, but the people that it matters to are the ones that you really have to convince, because your opinion at the end of the day doesn't really matter to me. Who it's going to matter to is the government. And in this case, you're talking the judiciary, you're talking the police, the various police departments around this country. Those are the people that it matters to. You got to prove to the prosecutors in the municipal courts, traffic court, in the criminal court, the jury, if you have a jury trial, you're going to have to prove to those people that all of this stuff that you've adopted from the sovereign citizens is something that is relevant and it's legally sound, legally or lawfully sound, and that you should stand on this and it's not contrary to the laws of the state, etc. Right? So at the end of the day, with the point I'm trying to make is the brother is arguing from a position of opinion, right? And to me, that's always an exercise in futility. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to win an argument based on your feelings, right? And I feel that this, that, and the third, because there's no precedent. I will always say to the sovereign citizen laws, where's the precedent for what you're trying to do? If you can't show me the precedent, how is it that you think that you're right in exactly what you're saying? How is it that you think you in a position of authority to back me down when I can actually show you precedent for the position that I'm taking? See, the whole point is, can reparations be achieved without Pan-Africanism? Answers itself when you look at the precedent. That's the point that I'm trying to make, right? There's a sister right now who's doing it on the municipal, worked on it on the municipal level in Evanston, right? Some people say, well, we don't want to call that reparations or whatever the case is, but there's precedent for it being done on multiple levels, and I'll just leave it at that. So, because I don't want to go too, hard, But anyway, that's my position. I just want to touch on that a little something. But go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, man. It's interesting, man, when we have this conversation about freedmen and understanding, like, is freedmen the right term for us to be using? I think what we need to do is kind of put everybody into Freedmen University. We need to go back and introduce or reintroduce or reacquaint you with the term freedmen, because this is a term that obviously, as we've already said, alludes to the fact that what were we freed from? That's the question that is automatically coming to mind when you think of the term freedmen. What are we freed from? Obviously, we're freed from the institution of chattel slavery. So when we're using the term freedmen as opposed to, like, let's say being the descendant of freedmen as opposed to being a descendant of the institution of slavery is, to me, when I hear that, it connects me back to, when I say the term freedmen, it connects me back to the people, freedmen. And again, when you hear the term freedmen, it's not genderized to the point where it only means males. We're talking of, if you read the laws, obviously back in those days, property and things of that nature were going to be divvied to males and heads of household. But the term freedmen encompassed men and women. It encompassed, just like when you say human, you don't say human and then human. It's just human. So I just wanted to kind of nip that in the bud. When we say freedmen, it's encompassing the men and the women that were emancipated, who survived the institution of chattel slavery. Go ahead. Did somebody want to say something to that?
No, I was agreeing with what you're saying. It's an excellent analogy that you're making in terms of the usage of the terminology human and freeman, and addressing the idea that perhaps people don't like freedmen because it doesn't seem to mention women, but the fact is it does mention it is a reference to the men, the women, and the children. Right, it's a reference to so-called Afro-American race, as they were referenced or referred to in certain places. Right, even in the plea for the pension bill that the guy Vaughn did, which inspired the woman Callie House. In his plea, he calls them the Afro-American people. Right, and so it's not just about the men, even though it says freedmen. You're talking about the women and the children as well, just as the term human is a reference to both sexes, including the children when you're talking. So I just wanted to say I agree. That's a great analogy.
Yeah, and when we think about the term freedman, it appears in all kind of documents. Like we talked about the Freedmen's bills, including HR 51, which was, you know what? I'm going to share my screen, y'all. I'm gonna start bringing up some documents so y'all can see.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me bring this one up right here. I'm just going to share my entire screen. Share screen. Boom. And let me share this screen right here. All right, cool. So when you see things like this is HR 51 here. HR 51. This is in the Senate of the United States, March 2nd, 1864, blah, blah, blah. An act to establish the Bureau of Freedmen's Affairs. Be it
You can make it
enacted
a
by
little
the...
bigger.
Yeah, hold on. Let me blow it up a little bit. Is that better?
Yeah, that's
Oh
much
yeah,
better.
much better.
All right. So this is Charles Sumner, you know, it said read twice and referred to a select committee on slavery and freedmen. Okay. And then May 25th, 1864, reported by Mr. Sumner with an amendment. All right. So they struck out some stuff in the initial bill. All right. So it says an act to establish a Bureau of Freedmen's Affairs, be it enacted by the Senate and House of Representatives of the United States of America, Congress assembled, that an office is hereby created of the War Department to be called the Bureau of Freedmen's Affairs. I'm not going to go through all of this, you know. I'm just going to kind of scroll through and just to show you, like this is the 1864 document that created the Freedmen's Bureau. So Freedmen was the official term. Okay, so it says let me go down here. You know, in fact, I'm not gonna go. I just wanted to show you because if I get into it and start it, I'm gonna have to read the whole thing to or at least a large part of it to get through it. I don't want to do that. I wanted to just show you that there's that document that created the Freedmen's Bureau. I want to go back and talk about. I'm gonna go to this right here. You know, when we talk about the freedmen, we got to understand a lot of our claim in terms of reparations, people are starting to... We had a conversation earlier within our group, and we were talking about the 40 acres and a mule, because I think a lot of people, when we talk about the 40 acres and a mule, we use that as like the reference to say, see, the government did reparations. All Black folks in America deserve 40 acres and a mule. And that was Field Order 15. You know, Field Order 15 was General William Tecumseh Sherman, who, let me give you a little bit of background on Field Order 15. He instituted that field order because these were, he had the United States Army was having all of these lands that were being confiscated and property confiscated, and these people freed, you know, in the South as they were winning battles. So they had all these people following them around, and these people were just homeless and had nowhere to go. So they essentially said, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these abandoned and confiscated lands in South Carolina, Georgia, northern Florida, and we're going to give it to some of the people. Let me read this. And the reason why I'm reading this is because there was a discussion that was had saying that the 40 acres and a mule was only talking about being distributed to only a few thousand freedmen. Okay, after the war, I mean, during the Civil War, when the war was being, as these battles were being won, and it didn't apply to all of the freedmen who, like the millions of freedmen, 4 million, I believe it was after 1865. It didn't apply to
Right.
all of them getting entitled to it. So what we're going to do is we're going to show how the assassination of Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson, pretty much a conservative apologist and Confederate friendly president, pretty much put a monkey wrench into the plans of instituting a program which would have entitled all of the freedmen to 40 acres and a mule, having that opportunity. So hang on, we're gonna get through it. So I'm gonna break down this document right here, but let me read it. It says, in the late stages of the Civil War, in its aftermath, the federal government, primarily Republicans, tried to relieve destitution among free people and help them gain economic independence through attempts to allocate land. These efforts, both military and legislative, help explain why African Americans thought that compensation was attainable. Special Field Orders 15, issued by General Sherman in January 1865, promised 40 acres of abandoned and confiscated land in South Carolina, Georgia, and northern Florida, largely the sea islands and coastal lands that had previously belonged to Confederates, to freed people. Sherman also decided to loan mules to former slaves who settled the land. Now, by the way, this source is coming from, it's an article that is on archives.gov, the National Archives. So it says, but these efforts were rolled back by President Andrew Johnson's Amnesty Proclamation of May 29, 1865. By the latter part of 1865, thousands of free people were abruptly evicted from their land that had been distributed to them through Special Field Orders 15. Circular number 15, issued by the Freedmen's Bureau on September 12, 1865, coupled with Johnson's presidential pardons, provided restoration of land to former owners. With the exception of a small number who had legal land titles, freed people were removed from the land as a result of President Johnson's restoration program. Now, look, we earlier today we read through and we were talking about the Andrew Johnson's May 29th Amnesty Proclamation, and pretty much what happened was, let me give you a timeline. January 1865, Field Order 15. April 1865, Abraham Lincoln gets his brains blown out. May 1865, the next month, Johnson rolls back he rolls back Field Order 15. He rolls it back because he says basically those people that were the insurrectionists, those people who fought in the Civil War, or those people, with the exception of a few specific people in categories, they get all of their property back except for the people that they had that were enslaved, because obviously those people were no longer considered their property. So they got to get back their land and all this kind of stuff. So once the land that they got to get back included the land that was given to freedmen under Field Order 15. So essentially he just reneged on it. He just took it away. And they didn't take it away just by paper. They took it away by force. If they had to get you up off the land, they brought the guns through and got you up off that land.
Right.
And go ahead, Ali, if you want to build on that, or Grim.
Man, it's really nothing else to be said. I mean, this whole Freedmen thing is, if I do say so myself, is genius, man. And it basically leads us to reparations, because here the bottom line is this. I mean, it's simple. It's not complicated. It's not super mathematical. It's this. The federal government promised to protect its citizens, which the freedmen are citizens, and they basically failed to protect and ensure the success, the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness of freedmen. And this is not just something that we are talking about in the past. This, from the time of 1865 to 1965, like we talked about before, the civil rights movement wasn't nothing new. The civil rights movement, the Plessy versus Ferguson, the Brown versus the Board of Education, basically those people were reaching back way back to from them to the Reconstruction era laws, the Reconstruction Amendments, the 13th, well, namely the 14th and 15th Amendment, that the federal government basically refused to enforce. The forward motion that Dr. Martin Luther King was able to obtain for our people in civil rights was something that they had failed to enact in 1870, 1865. You can keep going backwards or forwards in time. They basically failed over and over again to honor that which they say they were going to honor. And Josh broke it down beautifully, and I really can't add to that. The bottom line, they banged up Abraham Lincoln, the beast of revelations. That's what I call Andrew Johnson. Excuse me. He came in there, undone everything, gave the insurrectionists power again. So through that power that he gave the insurrectionists, they were able to bring in with Jim Crow laws. If you don't know who Jim Crow is, Jim Crow was a minstrel character, a blackface character that I can't remember this white actor, but he basically, they basically named those laws that they were passing after this Jim Crow character, in which they were making fun of our people as this, scratching, head scratching, degraded human being. So, with that being said, they was able to pass these laws, and they killed over 4,000 of our people between a certain time period. We talking about just lynching alone. They lynched over 4,000 of our people between a specific time period. And right now we are reviewing the book, The Devil You Know. We reviewing that book right now. This is the reason why black people scattered in small groups all over this country and don't have no political power, is because we fled the South, running from what? The violence that was being perpetrated by the insurrectionists. So Josh was 100% right in our reparations claim. You follow what I'm saying? Is based upon not just what somebody did to us, not just what the slave master did to us, not just what the Ku Klux Klan did to us. It ain't, you see, that's what people get mixed up, Ali. They think that we're saying that we are owed reparations because somebody owed our ancestors, and that's in the past. Or somebody hung our ancestors, and that is the past. The federal government passed laws, right, verifying our citizenry in this country, our citizenship in this country, and they failed to protect us for over 150 years, even down to Congressman, the Congress, the districting. Basically, hundreds of conservative lawmakers were able to choose their voters. You follow what I'm saying? As opposed to the voters choosing the congressman. So now we got people like Mitch McConnell, who've been in office longer than some of our listeners have been alive. You follow what I'm saying? So
that's right.
All of that stuff traces back to the time where the freedmen were disadvantaged and no one basically protected the sons and the daughters of freedmen. You follow what I'm saying? Unfair housing practices, unfair lending practices. So you get somebody, you pass down 2 to 3 generations of poverty, right? And then you tell it that you come to modern times and say, "Oh, you niggers, y'all ain't nothing. You can't even pull yourselves up by your bootstraps." While at the same time, they made all kinds of rules and regulations and grants and all kinds of money that they were given, and Dr. King exposed that. They were given tons of land to the white citizens, giving them all kinds of opportunities. They were the GI Bill didn't even cover us as adequately as it covered them, right? And then you pass down the wealth, and then you say, "Hey, why you poor? You lazy dog." If anybody's lazy, y'all bred laziness into us by taking away our hopes, our dreams, and our desires by creating a system, you know? It's just like Dave Chappelle said when he was talking about Donald Trump. This is the last thing I'm gonna say. He was saying that what Trump did with the coronavirus thing, right, was akin to a hungry man with a bag of hamburgers going into a room or something like that with homeless people and say, "These is mine," right? These my hamburgers, right? And say, "Hey, all you guys, pull yourself by the bootstraps, go get something to eat." And that's what they did to us over and over and over again, y'all. And here's the thing that nobody never noticed. They made our intelligentsia, whether it's conservative or liberals, believe in that crap. So that's why we say we don't need reparations. We can do this. We don't need reparations. We know what you can do. We don't have no doubt in what you can do. The thing is that an injury occurred, and the injury needs to be fixed. And that's all I got to say on that.
Yeah, let me pull up something real quick, man. The OG sent me something else. This goes to those that seen the beginning of this particular live stream. I was showing how the administration via the Treasury is going to pump $9 billion into community programs or minority programs and investments all over this country. And this is why this Freedmen's conversation is so important. Just check this out, family. check out what Joe Biden said. They're not uncertain about what they plan on doing. Joe Biden comes from old segregationist stock, period. And when we realize that, the better we'll equip ourselves politically on how to fight back or at least strategize against some of the things that these people are proposing. This is from the New York Post, published today. Biden tells NASA engineer Indian Americans are taking over the country. Let's read some of this. Let me blow this up a little bit. Our identity is important. Our identity is important. It says, Joltin' Joe is back. President Biden on Thursday made one of his most head-turning comments since being sworn in when he told an Indian American aerospace engineer that immigrants from the subcontinent are taking over the U.S. It's amazing. Indian descent Americans are taking over the country. You, my vice president, my speechwriter, Biden told Swati Mohan, you, talking about the NASA engineer, my vice president, he doesn't call her an African American. You, my vice president, my speechwriter, Biden told Swati Mohan, NASA's guidance and control operations lead for the Mars Perseverance rover landing. Biden made the seemingly tone-deaf effort at levity before telling the NASA group that diversity in the U.S. allows for the betterment of, quote unquote, every single solitary culture. I don't know if Joe Biden has read the report on immigration that showed that immigration is hurting Black folk, particularly Black men. It is pushing us towards higher incarceration and homicide rates, which is another thing that I showed earlier. So this is why we have to come under a banner. And we're saying Freedmen, we're not trying to tell anyone they shouldn't call themselves this or they shouldn't call themselves that. I personally would never use ADOS again because it's toxic. it's only an ode to Yvette Carnell and her sidekick Tone Talks, Antonio Moore. It's not an ode to a lineage, because they say if you're not a part of their personal private membership group, then you're not ADOS. So that's fine. We got Freedmen on the record. We got Freedmen on the record.
That's
and
right.
Let me just briefly, before y'all come back in, I want to say, last summer, the brothers and I were building, and we were going through all of this Reconstruction history. Amazed by it, because most of us on this panel, all of us are very well studied on a great deal of topics, man. I mean, there's not too many places that we can't go historically, right? But on the history of our freedmen ancestry, we kept finding information, and it was amazing us. And we came up with, we didn't come up with it, we just said that we need to resurrect this term freedmen. It's legitimate. Right.
That's
now,
right.
we said this last summer. This was before any fallout with the V-Hive and the cult of Yvette and the Twitter trolls and the rest of them guys. We had been said this, which is why we started the United Sons and Daughters of Freedmen, which was an official 501c3 in May of 2020. I thought it was June. The document says May. Thank you. right? So we thought that, I'm about to wrap up, Ali. We thought that it'd be fitting that we use this name of our ancestors. And already this thing is catching fire. Already all over the country, we see freedmen societies and the National Association of Freedmen and Freedmen this and Freedmen that. Facebook groups called Freedmen Street. I go on Clubhouse, they got rooms, the Freedmen Hangout, or the Freedmen's talk about reparations, the Freedmen this and the free. You start to feel the spirit of your ancestors coming back alive within you. They were not only political, they were freedom fighters. Most of the men were soldiers.
Yeah.
Soldiers. Yeah, go ahead, Brother Ali.
No, I'm part of your amen section right now, bro. That's all it is, man. Sometimes I'll be in that spirit, like that's right, preach.
So we just, like I said, we keep pulling up a lot of information and showing that our people this is a part of, this is a part of us right here. These acts and all of these different things right here. HR 613, an act to continue enforce, to amend, an act to establish a bureau for the relief of freedmen and refugees and for other purposes, right? Like, this is in the record books. This is something that's tangible, that we can touch, period. So let's, somebody asked a question in the chat about what do we think about Native Black Americans? I mean, if that's a term that you feel comfortable with, I'm not telling you not to use it. I'm just saying what we think makes sense. That's all.
Right. And I tell you, I move in between different terminologies depending on the point that I'm trying to make. Right. So you might hear me say foundational Black American because I love the term. I think the term is accurate, particularly when you're really speaking about foundational Black Americans. So if I'm trying to make a point like I was making about, say, for instance, the brother Prince Hall and his contributions to the founding of this country as a man who was involved in the military, you know what I mean, who was here before the founding of the United States, who was involved in it and who considered himself a citizen and fought for its independence. You can't say that people like that were not foundational Black Americans, because they are actually foundational to this thing called the United States of America. I love the term. It's completely accurate in its application with regard to certain people. I like Native Black American when you're trying to make a distinction between the people who are descendants of former slaves versus people who might have voluntarily migrated after chattel slavery's abolition, right? So Native Black American is quite accurate depending on depending on what you're using it for, right? Um, I love Freedmen as a reference to the people who are supposed to, when we're talking about the exercise of the First Amendment of petitioning, the right to petition your government for redress of grievance. I love the idea of the Freedmen because we see that the Freedmen's Bureau was something that was designed to help transition the people from that slave institution into American citizenship. And the terminology that the government acknowledged was the term freedmen. And so it wasn't just the freedmen, it was those people who were immediately freed from slavery as well as their descendants, right? So we are the descendants of those people who were freed by the 13th Amendment. And so from the standpoint of talking about the reparations program, the freedmen who were supposed to benefit from the Freedmen's Bureau, the Freedmen's Bank, and all of these other pieces of freedmen legislation that were cut off from that by the works of racist whites, the descendants of the freedmen, to me, makes all the sense in the world as we try to fix what was done wrong to us from that point moving forward. So I just think that it depends on the application and what it is, and for the purposes of what we're talking about, which is political in nature, the term freedman makes all the sense in the world, and that term is political and is listed in the acts of Congress as we've just seen on the screen. So I will stop right there with that, brothers.
Yeah, and I wanted to post this because this brought some context for those who are not familiar with these statistics. This brought some context to what even what Joe Biden was saying. I mean, yeah, it was a blunder. He's known for making like tone deaf kind of racist statements. That's just who Jim Crow Joe Biden is. But he's not lying. You know, he's not lying when he says, you know, these people. Think about it. I mean, this is. You know, this is going to show like the failure of America to do right by the freedmen. You know, you want to hold descendants of freedmen at the bottom. You want to have generations of terrible policies and just crushing us in America, right? You want to have generations of that. And so you look at the result of that today. This is Color Wealth Report. This is one of the only reports that I can think of that actually tracked wealth, household wealth, not just by race, but they broke it down by subcategories underneath race. So you got U.S. Black, you got African Black. You don't just have Mexican, you got Mexican and other, I mean, you don't just have Latino, you got Mexican and other Latino. You don't just have Asian. They break it down to Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Filipino, and Asian Indian. And you look here and you see like Asian Indians, 460,000 median net worth. And this is not this. I mean, I wish I could even show liquid net worth, because I believe in, if you look at the liquid net worth. So for those of you who don't know, hopefully most of you do, but net worth is just you take everything that you own and you subtract out of that everything that you owe. So this is the middle family, the middle Black U.S. Black family, you know, which largely is descendants of freedmen in Los Angeles, the LA metro area, is $4,000. You look at the middle African Black family, which is, I would assume, majority Nigerian out in Los Angeles, is 72,000. So if we would just had Black, they would have averaged those two together and the numbers would have been messed up. You look at white, 355. So Indian is over white. You know, Chinese is over white. Japanese is over white. So when he says it's taking over, I mean, come on, let's. I'm just gonna spend one more minute on this, and then we moving on. Would somebody please put in the chat what the name of the richest Black person in America? Even can even name Africans, you know, because I don't even know how we would distinguish who from who, whether you be able to know. But
in tech, though, right?
Yeah, in tech. Name the richest Black people in LA in the tech realm. Please, somebody put that in the chat. Name one billionaire, or name just the richest Black person in tech in California that you know. Put that in the chat. If it's crickets in the chat, if I don't see a response in the chat, I would have to assume you don't know any. I don't know. I can't tell you one. So, but at the same time, you see H-1B visas, and you see, you go to look at a lot of the top tech companies, and you see India's in top positions. You see a large percentage of them working in the jobs, and this is a failure to allow the descendants of freedmen opportunity to be able to reach higher levels of education, to have the levels of wealth, the levels of access to capital, to start businesses, the discrimination in the hiring and the advancement of employment in against the descendants of freedmen in America. So yeah, and we gonna couple that with chemical warfare in the large metropolitan areas in the form of the crack epidemic. It's so many things that result with this number right here. Racist housing policy. These are things none of these people had to overcome, except for descendants of freedmen. Anybody want to say something on that? Because I want to move back.
No, I was just adding environmental. We haven't even talked about places like Cancer Alley, and then building our communities and things in toxic areas, including the whole Flint water thing, all of that stuff. So I was just adding environmental.
Yeah, you want to real quick, Grim, you wanted to share anything else?
No, that was it, brother.
All right.
Let me go to something real quick, y'all. I want to go back to this right here, because when we talk about Field Order 15, what did I just click on? That's not what I was trying to click on. Anyway, when we talk about Field Order 15, let me get out of this. I wanted to just show y'all. I want to just read it.
You have the text for Field Order 15 pulled up?
Yeah, I got it right here. Can you see it?
All right. No, not yet. Because I was going to say I wanted to touch on sections 3 and 4 particularly, but go ahead. You got it.
If you wanted to, again, you can read it right here because I got it up. But if you wanted me to read it, I'll just read it, and then
you can go ahead.
Just jump in. Hold on, let me blow it up so y'all can see it better. All right. So this is January 16, 1865, and this is, man. All right, look, I got to give y'all one more piece before I bring that in, because, and by the way, look, we're not just holding on to sources here. We want to empower all the descendants of freedmen with powerful sources. So I want to say, everybody, the University of Maryland has an excellent resource. Go to freedmen.umd.edu, and they have all kind of documents and records and things that you can review. This, look, it's Freedmen. It's just talking about Freedmen. Freedmen, the Southern Society Project. You can go on here and it tells you the chronology of the Civil War. I mean, of emancipation during the Civil War.
Did you want to share it? You want to screen share it, brother, so they could see it, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna read some of the stuff from here, but I just wanted to show everybody this website and all the stuff they have on here. So they have all these documents. They have this all the way from 1861 down to 1867. So I'm gonna read from some of these documents, and but right now I want to go from one that is coming from 1865. This is right before Special Field Order 15. I thought this was powerful. This is when General Sherman had a meeting between Black religious leaders and the Union military authorities, right? Hold up. Yeah, city of Savannah, Georgia, January the 12th, 1865, 8 p.m. Okay, so just I'm not going to read this whole thing. I just want to show you some of the people that are there at the meeting. It says, 1, William J. Campbell, age 51, born in Savannah, slave until 1849, then liberated by will of his mistress, Miss May Maxwell. For 10 years, pastor of the First Baptist Church of Savannah, numbering about 1,800 people. Average congregation, 1,900. Church property belonged to the congregation. Trustees, white, worth $18,000. So these are like Negro ministers. You know, a lot of these people who may have been freed before emancipation. And I just thought it was interesting. Let's read this one. Ulysses L. Houston, age 41 years, born in Grahamsville, South Carolina, slave until Union Army entered Savannah, owned by Moses Henderson, Savannah, and pastor of Third African Baptist Church, congregation number 400, church property worth 5,000, belongs to the congregation in the ministry around 8 years. So this is like, you know, people like that are leaders in the community coming to talk to Sherman, and they, you know, they're expressing their, you know, they're just telling what the needs of the community are in terms of talking to Sherman. So it says, first, state what your understanding is in regards to acts of Congress and President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation touching the condition of the colored people in rebel states. Answers. So far as I understand, President Lincoln's proclamation to the rebellious states is that if they will lay down their arms and submit to the laws of the U.S. before the 1st of January 1863, all should be well. But if they did not, all the slaves in the rebel states should be free henceforth forever. That is what I understood. Second, state what you understand about slavery and the freedom and that was to be given by the president's proclamation. Answer. Slavery is receiving by irresistible power the work of another man and not by his consent. The freedom, as I understand it, promised by the proclamation is taking us from under the yoke of bondage and placing us where we could reap the fruit of our own labor, take care of ourselves, and assist the government in maintaining our freedom. You know, so this is a powerful, you know, discussion. And I'm just thinking about what it would be like to be at, you know, in this discussion and being on the precipice of freedom. You know, this is for all of the people who say reparations will never happen. Do you think any of these people imagine that the day will come where the masses of Black folks will be emancipated? These people didn't believe that. These people were born into slavery. That some kind of way, as a minority of them, were able to get some type of manumission, you know, whether it be upon will, whether it be upon working to, look, read this. Garrison Frazier, age 67 years, born in Granville, County, North Carolina, slave until 8 years ago when he bought himself and his wife, paying $1,000 in gold and silver. Is an ordained minister in the Baptist church, but his health failing has now charge of no congregation, has been in the ministry 35 years. Do you think that this man who, that says been in the ministry 35 years, but he was a slave in the ministry? Says slave 8 years ago. Do you think?
Josh, real quick. I didn't mean to cut you, but I just want to highlight this. I don't know if y'all touched this. My internet just keeps going in and out. I don't know if we having some issues in the area or what, but I want to touch on this comment by Sherry Thomas that says she received a tweet asking who the refugees are, Ray HR 613, because, you know, people see that term refugee and they wonder exactly what is meant by refugee.
Yeah, it was certain, you know, even if certain whites, you know, who, you know, they were not associated, didn't, you know, necessarily want to associate with the Confederacy. But
there were a lot of whites who were displaced,
yes,
who were not secessionists, but because they were residents of the states, they were forced into displacement and forced into this war, and probably, you know, you got those, and then you're probably even including certain free Blacks who might have been displaced by the war or what have you. You know what I mean? You know, go ahead, brother. I just wanted to say that.
The reason why, but real quick, Josh, there's a reason why I wanted to highlight that, because we have pretendians running around, and I'm gonna call their names, legendary Top Caps and Dane Calloway, saying that Freedmen was, well, Dane Calloway just made up some nonsense, but Top Caps said that Freedmen was used for white people as well. And that's the reason why I wanted to highlight that comment and just give some breakdown on it, because people need to know who the refugees are being referenced when we see this term associated with these types of bills, particularly this bill to establish what's known or has come to be known as the Freedmen's Bureau. Yeah, go ahead, brother Josh.
Yeah, I want to say to that, man, like I was in Virginia, we had some interesting things happen in Virginia. You know, we had certain things that happened with our governor to where he is, you know, especially after the George Floyd situation last year, he had certain laws and stuff passed that really, you know, was moving things in the right direction towards fixing some long outstanding injustices in terms of education and a lot of things in Virginia that was racist, right? And I was just reviewing some of these reports, and I started looking at some of photographs that were taken and depictions that were drawn from the Civil War. And you got to understand the level of mass destruction that happened during the Civil War. I mean, it was like cities,
Right.
towns, homes, everything was just reduced to rubble, burnt all the way down. So if you think about it, those people who may not have wanted to participate in the Confederate Army or may not have agreed, I'm talking about white people in the South, they were just living there, and their property was confiscated by Confederates or was burnt down by the Union or whoever the case may be. So these people like, I ain't got nowhere to go either. So yeah, there had to be some type of government program to include helping those people, you know, get back to, you know, some type of living condition that was manageable for them. You know, manageable.
Can I share something, Josh?
Go ahead, brother. I'm gonna come back to you.
You're absolutely right. I just need to share the screen real quick.
Let me stop it.
It's a piece from the United States Senate on the Freedmen's Act, right? So when you're talking about the Freedmen's Act, they want to know who the freedmen are as opposed to the refugees, right? The refugees could have been free black refugees as well. Don't think it's just white folks that were displaced, because you got free blacks who were probably displaced during that war as well. You're talking about a war that lasted about 4 years, right? Something like that. And so a lot of destruction occurred, right? And a lot of people got caught up in it that didn't necessarily want to be a part of it. This is a civil war, meaning this is not a war overseas. This is something that was taking place right here at home, right? A lot of destruction. There are even some images of how certain places were destroyed. But let me just read some of this. Let me know if you can see this.
Oh yeah.
You can see it. All right. So on March 3rd, 1865, Congress passed an act to establish a bureau for the relief of freedmen and refugees, making a distinction between the two, to provide food, shelter, clothing, medical services, and land to displaced Southerners, right? And that could be black or white, including newly freed African Americans, right? So now when they're talking about freed men, they're talking about the people known today as African Americans, or the ancestors at that time of the people known today as African Americans, right? So let's go further. The Freedmen's Bureau was to operate during the present War of Rebellion and for 1 year thereafter, and also establish schools, supervise contracts between freedmen and employers, and manage confiscated and abandoned lands. The battle to establish the Freedmen's Bureau and then to extend the legislation 1 year later was a major factor in the struggle between Andrew Johnson and the radical Republicans in Congress over Reconstruction, and the role of the federal government in integrating 4 million newly emancipated African Americans. So the role of the federal government in integrating 4 million newly emancipated African Americans into the political life of the nation. And remember, this is what they're saying. The role, that's the battle to establish the Freedmen's Bureau was very much political in nature. Reparations is political in nature, right? So much so the federal court said it raises such a political question that it can only be dealt with by your legislative and executive branches of government, right? And so when we're talking about freedmen, the legislative body established something called the Freedmen's Bureau specifically to integrate 4 million newly emancipated African Americans, then known as freedmen, into the political life of the nation. And so the bottom line point is that's what we're looking at, right? And I know they want to make side arguments about, well, who were the refugees. It really doesn't even matter who the refugees were, right? Because it's kind of like a fallacious argument. Let's take it off. Let's take it off kilter, right? They want to focus on freedmen, but let's have them arguing about who the refugees
Yep.
because the refugees was white folks, right? No, it wasn't just white folks. There was black folks who would be considered refugees, free blacks who were not emancipated, people that were already free that were displaced and were quote unquote black or Negro would have been considered refugees as well, right? So it's really simple. The bill was really designed to help primarily those 4 million, as Frederick Douglass said, 4 million people emancipated into poverty and homelessness, right? So you want to get them into political life and get them settled in a place which is what Field Order 15 was supposed to be designed to do. And Field Order 15, if you look at that, the text of that, I know you're going to bring it up, Josh, it also outlines who they're talking about. Right in Section 1 of Field Order 15, it talks about Negroes now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. So you're talking about so-called Negroes, right? Thus, that's who we're talking about. Those people who were emancipated through these series of events, including the 13th Amendment and their descendants, right? That's what we're talking about. It's really not about the refugees.
Yeah.
I know people want to make it about the refugees, but it's not about the refugees. That's really a fallacious argument. It's just kind of like a thing of let's get into an argument about something else just so we can distract the conversation away from the
You breaking up,
terminology
Ali.
Freedmen. But it's not
Josh, is he breaking up on
the
your end?
Freedmen's Bureau is of what the Freedmen's Act established. The Freedmen's Bureau is a primary example. Yeah, how about now? How am I sounding?
You good
Testing
now.
1 2.
Yeah, you good now. You was going in and out.
All right. So yeah, I was just saying, and I'm gonna wrap it up.
So I'm
gonna just say
before you pull that
the
up.
Freedmen's Act, which establishes the Freedmen's Bureau. Oh no, I'm not pulling nothing up. I'm not gonna pull nothing up. But in any case, you know, we have examples of the terminology freedmen being acknowledged in government already. So I'll leave it there.
Go ahead.
I was gonna pull up this comment, Josh, but I'm gonna just pull it up. One tall girl 78 says, "How can citizens of a country be refugees in their own country?" I think Ali just kind of broke that down.
Yeah, a refugee. Come on, like, what is a refugee? Can we pull up the definition of refugee or refuge? One seeking refuge, and remember, you're talking about certain people who were torn away from their country, right? Particularly the ones in the South who were torn away from their country. A person who has been forced to leave their country in order to escape war, persecution, or natural disaster. So what happened during the Civil War, right? This is simple, and I don't know what the point is that she's trying to. I guess she's trying to create an argument, but go ahead.
I think it's a fair question, right? But if you look at these synonyms, because refugee, look, displaced person, and I'm going to give an example. I don't know what DP means. Escapee, fugitive, asylum seeker, and runaway. So let's stick with displaced person. During Katrina, the victims of that flooding, the people that were displaced, were constantly referenced as refugees. They were constantly referenced as refugees. So you know that's one way to look at it one tall girl.
Right. And so what I was saying is, when you had the splitting of the nation, right? They created something called the Confederate States of America, which they felt was a whole separate country. Had its own president, had its own vice president, had its own constitution. They considered themselves to be citizens of that quote unquote new country, etc. They no longer considered themselves or the citizens of those states to be citizens of the United States. They were considered citizens of the Confederate States of America. And so the point of it is that these people who did, there were people, if you read through certain historical documents, you'll find out that all of the people in the South were not with that war. They didn't all want to tear themselves away from United States citizenship. Some of the residents of those states did not want to engage in that war. They didn't agree with it. They didn't all agree with it. So we're talking about people who were forced to separate from the United States by way of the states' governments engaging in acts of rebellion and insurrection against the United States. And because they were residents or citizens of those states, they were forced into a situation. So it's really not that difficult to understand how a person can become displaced by way of a civil war where one faction of a country breaks off and declares itself independent and sovereign from the actual government.
Let me read this real quick. This is an NPR article. Are Katrina's victims refugees or evacuees? Hurricane Katrina created thousands of refugees who were forced into states throughout the South and beyond, but not so fast. Media out, because there was a debate about this. This is why I remember it. Media outlets have been deluged with complaints about the term refugee. Civil rights activist Al Sharpton said, quote, "They are not refugees, they are citizens of the United States." NPR has adopted a policy of not referring to them as refugees. In some dictionaries, the definition of refugee is simply, quote, "one seeking refuge." But other dictionaries include the qualifier that the word is usually applied to a person crossing national boundaries because of persecution. Even the etymology of the word contains examples of applying only to transnational evacuators and to those who don't leave their borders. So, it says this is more than an argument over semantics. The word refugee has certain connotations. Sharpton's point was that it strips a person of dignity. They're not refugees wandering somewhere looking for charity. He said they are victims of neglect and the situation, yada, yada, yada. We're not going to get too deep into that, but I just wanted to show that this term refugee has been used for the citizenry in the United States of America before, right?
That's exactly why I made the point of the splitting of the nation and the separation of the Confederate States from the United States, and the people who resided in the Confederate States that did not agree with the war, that sought refuge from the displacement and the violence and the destruction that they were forced into, even though they didn't agree with it. So that's the way I would that's the way I would deal with
no,
that.
Indeed, indeed. Yeah. Indeed. Josh looks like he has a problem coming back in. Yeah, there you go. There you go. Lionel Riley said, "I remember when we were in Atlanta, they called us refugees after Katrina. Bad memories." He also says, "I wasn't offended because we couldn't believe how we were treated. We felt like refugees, damn it." I mean,
yeah, I can dig it. I can dig it.
Let me know
man.
when you're ready, Josh.
You know what? I don't know when he's going to be ready, but one of the things that we could do is we could pull up the text for field order number 15 and kind of go through that. If you wanted to do that, we could do that.
I think that's what Josh has up.
Okay.
But I don't know if Josh can hear us. Josh, can you hear us?
You're unmuted. I see you're unmuted, but I don't hear you. Brother Josh, check. Mic check 1, 2. Mic check.
Mic check.
Yo. So let me just share. Hold hold on. I'm gonna share the screen because I don't know what's going on. So just so we're not just sitting here, let me share the screen for field order number 15. Right. Let's see what we got.
Indeed, family, make sure y'all hit that like button. If you have not, make sure you share this out. You can donate, contribute to the platform by using the Cash App handle, Be the Power. You can become a Patreon member. The link is in the chat. I mean, excuse me, in the description.
Okay, this is from Freedmen. The University of Maryland.edu, right? Freedmen and Southern Society Project. See, we didn't make this. It's not us. We're not making up the term Freedmen. We're not pulling this out of our asses, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? All right. So anyway, ordered by the commander of the military division of the Mississippi. I don't know what that means. Anyway, in the field, Savannah, 16th, 1865, special field order number 15. Obviously, those who know us from Tecumseh Sherman. No, Section 1, the islands of Charleston, south, the abandoned rice fields along the rivers for 30 miles back from the sea, and the country bordering the St. Johns River, Florida, are reserved and set apart for the settlement of the Negroes, now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. So, again, for anybody who desires to create a fallacious argument about who the freedmen are, right there pretty much in Section 1, they're telling you who the freedmen are. The Negroes now made free by the acts of war and the proclamation of the President of the United States. Section 2, at Beaufort, Hilton Head, Savannah, Fernandina, St. Augustine, and Jacksonville, the blacks may remain in their chosen or accustomed vocations, but on the islands and in the settlements hereafter to be established, no white person, whatever. See, and this is for the people who are concerned about the refugees, right? So let's see what they say about this, because no white person, whatever, unless military officers and soldiers detailed for duty, will be permitted to reside, and the sole and exclusive management of affairs will be left to the freed people themselves, subject only to the United States military authority and the acts of Congress. By the laws of war and orders of the President of the United States, the Negro is free and must be dealt with as such. He cannot be subjected to conscription or forced military service, save by the written orders of the highest military authority of the department, under such regulations as the President or Congress may prescribe. Domestic servants, blacksmiths, carpenters, and other mechanics will be free to select their own work and residence, but the young and able-bodied Negroes must be encouraged to enlist as soldiers in the service of the United States, to contribute their share towards maintaining their own freedom and securing their rights as citizens of the United States. Negroes so enlisted will be organized into companies, battalions, and regiments under the orders of the United States military authorities, and will be paid, fed, and clothed according to law. The bounties paid on enlistment may, with the consent of the recruit, go to assist his family and settlement in procuring agricultural implements, seed, tools, boots, clothing, and other articles necessary for their livelihood. Section 2. Let's see Section 3. This is interesting, right? Because I know we had a conversation as to how many people and who this thing was really referring to. Number 3, whenever 3 respectable Negroes, heads of families, shall desire to settle on land and shall have selected for that purpose an island or a locality clearly defined within the limits above designated, the inspector of settlements and plantations will himself, or by such subordinate officer as he may appoint, give them a license to settle such island or district and afford them such assistance as he can to enable them to establish a peaceable agricultural settlement. The 3 parties named will subdivide the land under the supervision of the inspector among themselves and such others as may choose to settle near them so that each family shall have a plot of not more than 40 acres of tillable ground, and when it borders on some water channel with more than 800 feet waterfront, in the possession of which land the military authorities will afford them protection, will such time as they can protect themselves or until Congress can regulate their title. The quartermaster may, on the requisition of the inspector of settlements and plantations, place at the disposal of the inspector one or more of the captured steamers to ply between the settlements and one or more of the commercial points heretofore named in the orders, to afford the settlers the opportunity to supply their necessary wants and to sell the products of their land and labor. Number 4, whenever a Negro has enlisted in the military service of the United States, he may locate his family in any one of the settlements at pleasure and acquire a homestead and all other rights and privileges of a settler as though present in person. In like manner, Negroes may settle their families and engage on board the gunboats, or in fishing, or in the navigation of the island waters without losing any claim to land or other advantages derived from this system. Now, I don't have to read a whole lot more, but I just wanted to make it very clear, right? Because this thing really does give you a good outlining of who is being referred to Special Field Order number 15. It's not just anybody, right? They're talking about, they mention the term blacks, freed from slavery. They mentioned the term Negroes, not necessarily people of any, I know the question came up as to whether or not this was a specific reference to the Gullah people. This doesn't say that. It says Negroes, blacks freed from slavery. The Gullah weren't the only blacks who were enslaved. And it doesn't give any specific location. It doesn't say that you had to be a black enslaved in the South Carolina, Georgia, or Florida regions. It just says blacks freed from slaves. It talks about Negroes who were freed from slaves and who are desirous of, establishing themselves in certain outline or designated lands that they mention in this particular field order. I'll stop right there because I know Brother Josh got some other things he wants to go in on, so I'll leave it right there.
I think Josh is having some technical difficulties.
Can y'all hear me? Can y'all hear
Oh,
me?
yeah, there you go.
Yes.
All right, cool. Finally. All right, so this is weird. Give me a second, cause I had some audio issues when I moved over. So let me just switch this thing over. Let me try this. Can y'all hear me now?
Yep.
All right. All right. Anyways, so yeah, I wanted to just show real quick because I'm glad you read that, Ali. What that does is it shows the people that, yeah, Field Order 15, a few things. Field Order 15 outlined who was this thing gonna go to? It talked about the land that they were giving away. It also talked about it made it to where, like, if you understand the strategy, Sherman was dragging around. He had all these freedmen that they had nowhere to go, so he assigned them land, but also he gave special privileges to those who would join the army. So you could get some of those lands even without being a resident of Georgia, South Carolina, or Florida. You can be, if you join the army or if you are already a part of the army, you could go and qualify for the program. I thought that was an interesting thing. And think about the reason why that is, because the United States military was going to have to protect those freedmen. And if you were going to be a person that was going to sign up to live there and work to protect the freedmen over there, yeah, they would provide the land for you. So if you understand that strategy, that's why the language was right there. But I wanted to also, let me share real quick as we close out. I just want to share a little bit to bring some more context, because this is very important, y'all. This is very important to understand the what was going on here. Because the argument is made sometimes, or I've heard the argument that was talking about, well, 40 acres and a mule is not something that all freedmen were entitled to. But again, this is January of 1865. This is just one move to give the freedmen something, those freedmen in this area something. There was a lot more to come, that was supposed to be coming, but just 3 months after this, they killed Abraham Lincoln. So a lot of things changed. And let me show you one thing that was supposed to also come. This right here that I'm sharing is actually from the Freedmen's Bureau Act. Basically, it's an act to establish a bureau for the relief of the freedmen and refugees. So let me skip all the way down to section 4. Section 4, and be it further enacted that the commissioner under the direction of the president shall have authority to set apart for the use of loyal refugees and freedmen such tracts of land within the insurrectionary states as shall have been abandoned, or to which the United States shall have acquired title by confiscation or sale or otherwise, and to every male citizen, whether refugee or freedman, as aforesaid, there shall be assigned not more than 40 acres of such land, and the person to whom it was so assigned shall be protected in the use of and enjoyment of the land for the term of 3 years at an annual rent not exceeding 6 per centum upon the value of such land, as it was appraised by the state authorities in the year 1860 for the purpose of taxation. And in case no such appraisal can be found, then a rental shall be based upon the estimated value of the land in said year, to be ascertained in such a manner as the commissioner may by regulation prescribe. At the end of said term, or any time during said term, the occupants of any parcel so assigned may purchase the land and receive such title thereto as the United States can convey, upon paying therefore the value of the land as it's ascertained and fixed for the purpose of determining the annual. So basically, it's saying this is 40 acres. They're talking about giving confiscated land. This is land that the government has got from the insurrectionary states. It says right here, such tracts of land within the insurrectionary states as shall have been abandoned, or to which the United States shall have acquired title by confiscation or sale or otherwise. Basically, they're saying, look, the land that we took, the land that these people abandoned, we're going to give y'all 40 acres on these lands. It doesn't say how many acres. They think about it. The Union Army has defeated the Confederates, and it's all of this land in Virginia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Louisiana, Alabama, Mississippi. This is land that it doesn't say only these parts right here. It says whatever lands. It says they can just issue the land. This is what was supposed to go to us, and this was thwarted. This was not delivered on. You know what I'm saying?
Right, and there was no cap. There's no cap. There was no cap on how much land could have been, allotted in these instances, man. You're talking about a number of states. Now, Field Order 15 mentions a certain a number of states, talking about South Carolina to Florida, right?
Right.
But this piece that you just read expands that, and that's the thing that people have to understand, is that this was just a field order, basically a policy, a military policy that was put in place here under this particular general. But at the same time, Congress has the authority to expand this. And the act that you just read, brother, shows the power of Congress and the intention of Congress to expand what was going to be designated as land allotments for the freedmen.
Yeah. I'm gonna share this. I'm gonna take it even further, Ali. I'm gonna take it even further. If you could just reshare my screen, Naheem. I'm gonna read, because I'm gonna show you something that even on top of that, Thaddeus Stevens, because he understood that they were not gonna deliver on that. So he tried to take it even further. Let me know when y'all can see my screen. Can y'all see it?
Yes, indeed.
So it says the Freedmen's Bureau Act had been established by Congress in March 1865 to help former slaves transition from slavery to freedom. Section 4 of the act, which I just read, authorized the Bureau to rent. This was renting, right? Rent no more than 40 acres of confiscated or abandoned land to free people and loyal white refugees for the term of 3 years. At the end of any term or any point during the term, the male occupants renting the land had the option to purchase it, and it would then receive a title to the land. But Johnson's restoration policy rendered Section 4 null and void and seriously thwarted the Bureau's officials' efforts to help the newly emancipated acquire land. Remember, I didn't read that on here, but we don't have enough time to read all this stuff. But I told you about the Amnesty Proclamation that Johnson did in May, which basically restored the property to the Confederates. So it says in 1866, the Southern Homestead Act was enacted. It was designed to exclusively give free people and white Southern loyalists the first choice of the remaining public lands from 5 Southern states until January 1867. But homesteading was problematic on many different levels. The short period allotted by Congress, 6 months, worked against free people because most were under contract to work or had leased land through the Bureau's contract labor policy until the end of the year. Because what they did was those people became sharecroppers, and the Freedmen's Bureau negotiated the rates, how much money they would make as a sharecropper, so they wouldn't get slave rates. They got, they negotiated on their behalf to get them, white people wages, basically, So it says Congress also underestimated the time it would take for freedmen and loyal whites to successfully complete the process of securing a homestead. This process involved filing claims, waiting indefinitely until offices opened or reopened, and working to secure enough money to purchase the land. Concurrently, free people faced Southern white opposition to settling land. Moreover, Congress provided no tools, seeds, rations, or any form of additional assistance to free people, and most free people's earnings just covered the bare necessities of life. Maintaining a homestead without assistance was almost impossible under those circumstances. Now, keep in mind, this is completely different than homestead acts later that included all of these other things that they did not give the freedmen homesteaders or people who were looking to homestead. They didn't give tools, seeds, they didn't subsidize, they didn't give any of that stuff. So now this is what I want. So now being that Johnson restored the property to the traders, right? This is many of them still understand this is a long process. There's no internet, there's no highways, there's a lot of stuff going on. It takes, things move slower at that time. Because I had an ancestor who had his property, a slave owner ancestor, his property wasn't, he got pardon letters, he got amnesty acts and all this kind of stuff, but his property wasn't returned to his family until 1875. Now, so it says on March 11th, 1867, House Speaker Thaddeus Stevens, radical Republican of Pennsylvania, introduced a bill, H.R. 29, that outlined a plan for the confiscated land in Confederate States of America. Section 4 of the bill, a proposed bill, explicitly called for the land to be redistributed to former slaves. I'm gonna read it, and then we're gonna wrap it up.
Yeah.
Because we can get into a whole lot more. We didn't get into the Vaughn joint. We didn't get into the ex-slave pension bill. We didn't get into Cali House. We didn't get into none of that. But we're gonna wrap it up because we don't have the time. All right. So it says, out of the lands thus seized and confiscated, the slaves who have been liberated by the operations of the war and the amendment of the Constitution or otherwise, who resided in said Confederate states on the 4th day of March 1861 or since, shall have distributed to them as follows, namely, to each male person who is the head of family, 40 acres, to each adult male, whether head of family or not, 40 acres, to each widow who is the head of family, 40 acres, to be held by them in fee simple, but to be inalienable for the next 10 years after they become seized thereof. And at the end of 10 years, the absolute title to said homesteads shall be conveyed to said owners or their heirs of such as are then dead. So it says Stevens knew that if the federal land redistribution legislation failed to pass, freed people would be at the whim of former slave owners for years to come. In support of his bill, he stated, withhold from them all their rights and leave them destitute of means of earning a livelihood, and they will become the victims of the hatred or cupidity of the rebels whom they helped to conquer.
Gotta hit them
Yo.
with the grim.
Ooh, what grim at? Yo, it says Republicans during the 1868 campaign even promised 40 acres and a mule to free people. A couple of decades passed before any further concerted efforts were made to provide economic relief and security for ex-slaves. And when there was another major effort, it was not by the government, but by former slaves and their allies. And that's when we would get to the ex-slave pension movement. I don't know if Naheem wants to hold on while we get into that. So
no, go ahead. Because people like, they looking like ex-slave pension. Bob Sanders put that. So yeah, go ahead, bro.
Yo, Ali, yo, you want to talk about that, Ali, or you want me to just read from here?
Read it from there, because after this, then we can go into, or maybe on the next one, because it's already an hour and 55 in. We can go into Vaughn's pension plea.
Oh man, that's why. I mean, I would like to start there, because it's hard to get into.
Start there?
Yeah, because it talks about that on here. It talks about that on here.
Well, yeah. So just read that.
You can just jump in.
Okay.
All right. It says, by the last decade of the 19th century, the idea of trying to procure the enactment of pension legislation for ex-slaves for their years of unpaid labor was put into action. The concept of ex-slave pensions was modeled after the Civil War era program of military service pensions, and the first ex-slave pension bill, H.R. 11119, was introduced by Representative William Connell of Nebraska in 1890. It was introduced at the request of Walter Raleigh Vaughn of Omaha, a white Democrat and ex-mayor of Council Bluffs, Iowa. He did not believe that it or subsequent bills should be identified as a pension bill, but instead as a Southern tax relief bill. See, you got to be smart when you marketing these bills, man. You can't just be saying we're gonna give you. So, and this is another point I want to make up. When the Japanese did the Civil Liberties Act of 1988, they didn't call that Japanese internment reparations. They call that the Civil Liberties Act. So in the future, when you see legislation that when you read it, it sounds like reparations to you, it meets the criteria, what we would put in the category of part of a reparations program, that you should understand that's what it is, and we should support it, because it's not going to be called reparations. Understand, they called this ex-slave pension a Southern tax relief bill, when essentially it was if you were a freedman, you got paid until you died, just like if you fought in a war, and just like if you fought in a civil war, not to the same amount, but the same concept. So it says Vaughn recognized that pensions would financially benefit former slaves and would indeed be a semblance of justice. Justice is synonymous for what?
Reparations.
That's right. For their years of forced labor. But the outcome he looked for involved ex-slaves spending their pensions. That's how you got to market that thing. They're going to spend the money in the South in order to give the devastated Southern economy a financial boost.
That's right.
Talking about reparations, we don't be saying it like you got to take, because people think we got to take money out of white people's account and put it in our account, and we gonna just take your money, your wealth, and then we gonna have the wealth. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it's gonna work at all. That's not how any reparations program work. That's not how the U.S. Treasury does. When we want to get something like that, those trillions will not come from white people. They'll come from the U.S. Treasury and go to us.
Exactly. And one of the arguments that we have to make sure that we make clear is that whatever federal reparations program is put in place for the descendants of freedmen here, is going to be something that's going to benefit this nation's economy. It's
Exactly.
like
But
because
think,
go ahead.
my bad, Ali. But just think about the article that I shared earlier. Where was that 9 billion coming from?
Right.
Yeah.
Right? Where was
Right.
that? You see, so people have to, and I'm gonna just share it right quick while you go in. Well, you still reading, Josh?
Well, I know, Ali. Did you want to?
No, all right. I'm not going to share everything, but let me just say,
Mhm.
I pulled up an article earlier. I'm gonna put the link in the chat from the New York Times. It says Treasury to invest $9 billion in minority communities. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen is making community development financial institutions central to achieving an inclusive economy. This usually means POC, people of color. Showed a sister who was featured in that article, who was the daughter of St. Lucian parents. And remember who the deputy secretary is of the Treasury, a Nigerian by the name of Wale Adeyemo. So we got to become invested in our politics. This is why this Freedmen information is so important, and what Josh is reading and what Ali is breaking down is so vital. That land in the South, I still believe that that's our land. But y'all go
That's right.
ahead. That's another.
And
That's
and,
exactly
and
right.
that's and we already touched on that being stolen Indian land. No,
That's right.
no,
That's right.
no.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Did you have that Vaughn's pension bill? Because I mean, the imagery of that is powerful. I don't know if you want to.
Oh yeah, I'll show the imagery. We don't.
Yeah.
I don't want to get into reading from it yet, but
No.
maybe on the next program or something, I'll show the imagery. Let me just let me see. Make sure I still have it up because I might have pulled it down.
Yeah, we're gonna show that so you can see it, and then I'm not gonna go down. I'm not gonna read to. I'm just gonna kind of skip down because I would just want to show you how that there was the movement. Because a lot of people, you want to talk about reparations. This is kind of like one of the origins of one of the earliest attempts at reparations, the earliest forms of
That's
reparations.
right.
And if you
And
got to understand, this is not only by radical Republicans, but by freedmen, I got a descendant of freedmen, I should say.
right. And this guy Walter R. Vaughn, who created this thing called the Freedmen's Pension Bill, his work, this particular work, played an inspirational role in Callie House's push as well. So I'm just going to show some things that's really from the some images from the book that are very pertinent. So let's do this real quick. Let me share the screen so you can see it. Right. Hold on. Give me a second. I know we're trying to get up out of here.
Yeah.
Let me. Is
Oh
that
yeah,
big
just
enough,
blow
or
that
should I
up.
make it bigger?
Yeah, blow it up a little bit if you can.
Let's see.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so let me go to this thing, see what that's looking like. All right, cool. So yeah, Vaughn's Freedmen's Pension Bill. Now this thing says, being an appeal in behalf of men released from slavery, a plea for American freedmen, and a rational proposition to great pensions to persons of color emancipated from slavery, right? So purely a bill designed to pay people simply from being emancipated from slavery, right? You're talking basically about compensation for the years of stolen labor. And how do we know that? I'm gonna show you something else. Let me show you something else, because he says something very important in this particular piece, right? So hold on. Let me do this. Let me stop sharing that. Share this other one. Be right there, people. Be right there, people.
Yeah, make sure y'all hit the thumbs up, family, if you have not already. We're gonna announce a book club, our first book club for next month, and we're gonna have a discussion about it. We're gonna have a discussion about it.
Can you see this here? You see this image?
Oh yeah.
Now, this is what he says here. The capital, Washington, D.C., where laws have been made and slavery endorsed for over 100 years, and where the results of Negro labor have been enjoyed without giving compensation therefor. Right? So I'm going to show you one more thing he says about the man who presented the bill in Congress. What's the guy's name again? Connell, brother?
Yeah, Connell from
I think the guy's
William
name
Connell, I think from Nebraska.
Yeah. All right. So let me show you what he says about him. It's powerful, some powerful words that the guy Walter Vaughn, who was a Democrat, by the way, that's very interesting at that time.
Mm-hmm.
He probably was one of what was called the Copperhead Democrats at that time. I haven't looked them up, but
yeah. So this is what he says, right? This piece was dedicated to W.J. Connell, the brave representative in the halls of American Congress from Nebraska, who dared to say that the slave of a century is entitled to financial recognition because of former wrongs. To him, it is dedicated by the author of this book and also the pension bill by his friend Walter Vaughn. So this man, he says, what W.J. Connell says, he said in Congress, slave of a century is entitled to financial recognition because of former wrongs. Not even just because of labor, stolen labor, but former wrongs.
That sounds like reparations to me.
That's what that sounds like.
Oh yeah. Hey, I got if y'all wonder like how much money they were talking about, let me pull it up so you can see how much money they were talking about. Because it was not just talking. They put a dollar amount on it. So hold on. Let me pull that up too. It was right here. Now, there were many. I gotta say this. This was a whole movement. It was a lot of organizations. It was a lot of organizations. I'm gonna read. These are some of the names of the organizations: the National Ex-Slave Pension Club, Association of the United States. That was Vaughn's Justice Party. It was so many others, but the one that picked up the most traction and the one that we have documentation on and records and we have like the Cali House was associated with was the National Ex-Slave Mutual Relief Bounty and Pension Association of the United States of America, or MRB in PA. This is another lesson learned right here. It says the ex-slave pension organizations did not work together collectively, but there is evidence that officers of at least a few of these organizations were interested in joining forces and consolidating their groups. So look, man, I just got to say, across the movement, there's certain people that just exhibit certain qualities that show that they're not interested in working together with other people who are leaders, and there are other people who understand that this mission is too important to not include people who have a genuine interest in actually seeing it come to fruition, that we have to work together. So we may have different organizational names, but we need the ones that are actually going to be about that are serious about getting to the end goal. We don't need to be playing like this. We don't need to be caught up in anything that's going to divide us to the point like where we just work against each other or we don't work with each other. So I'm going to say that, I don't care if you I don't care where you are, what your associations are. At the end of the day, we got to get this thing done. So This is a lesson learned where these organizations need to work together. All right, so it said this is the MRB and PA. You know, they propose. It says the organization supported a proposed pension payment scale based on the age of the beneficiaries that appeared in every ex-slave bill from 1899 onward. Ex-slaves 70 years and older at the time of disbursement were to receive an initial payment of $500 and $15 a month for the rest of their lives. Those aged 60 to 69 years will receive $300 and $12 a month. So it says 50 to 59 years, $100 and $8 a month. Those under 50 will receive a $4 a month pension. If the formerly enslaved persons were either very old or too ill to care for themselves, their caretakers were to be compensated. Once a freedman reached a certain age threshold, he or she would then be eligible for the higher pension. This proposed ex-slave pension payment scale is very similar to the Civil War pension gradation scale for soldiers with disabilities. Soldiers who became disabled as a result of military service received pension payments based on the nature of their partial disability and military rank. Over time, the Civil War pension program came to resemble a system of pensions for elderly veterans, just as the ex-slave pension movement's main focus was to secure pensions to particularly aid the elderly. Now, you know, I don't want to go on too much longer, but we cannot, you know, leave without talking about Callie Howe.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
We cannot. This is a powerful, powerful reparationist sister right here. Let me just tell you what she went through, because it's a lot to read through, but she was a leader of the MRB and PA. Her and this brother named Dickinson. So what they did, they fought and they built the organization. They grew their membership. But it says, let me read right here. It says, she soon became the national promoter of the movement alongside Dickerson. As the association's membership grew, government surveillance intensified. However, Dickerson, House, and other association officers were not aware of the federal government's intense interest in the organization and plans to undermine it and the larger movements. 3 federal agencies, the Bureau of Pensions, the Post Office Department, and the Department of Justice, worked collectively in the late 1890s and into the early 20th century to investigate individuals and groups in the movement. Yo, this sounds like COINTELPRO.
That's right.
Yeah.
In the 1800s, they've
Exactly.
been doing this stuff, man.
For sure. The officials who pursued the investigations thought the idea of pensioning ex-slaves was unrealistic because the government had no intention of compensating former slaves for the years of involuntary labor. Harrison Barrett, the acting assistant attorney general for the Post Office Department, admitted in an 1899 circular that there has never been the remotest prospect that the bill will become a law. That's his opinion. Who cares? In February 1902, letter to the commander-in-chief of the Grand Army of the Republic, the commissioner of pensions blamed the ex-slave pension organizations for arousing false hopes for reparation for historical wrongs to be followed by inevitable disappointment and probably distrust of the dominant race and of the government. See?
Crazy talk, man. That's crazy talk.
Yeah. So they're saying pretty much you arousing false hope is criminal. It should be criminal, you know. And look, for those of you who are saying the same thing, we're this never gonna happen. You just getting people fired up about false hopes, or you just helping Democrats or whoever pander.
Wow.
You think like these white supremacists that was trying to silence Callie House.
Woo! I gotta hit him with the grim. Woo!
So let's continue. It says special examiners of the law division of the Bureau of Pensions attended slave pension association meetings, took depositions from officers, national and local, and sent letters to officers and members to determine if officers were representing themselves as officials appointed by the United States government. The Bureau of Pensions also sent circulars to agents affiliated with various ex-slave pension organizations. Although these circulars usually carry disclaimer, while any class of citizens has unquestioned right to associate for the purpose of attempting to secure legislation believed to be advantageous. These words were often simply a formality. The Bureau's inspectors did not find any, or this, I shouldn't say, the Bureau's inspectors did not find evidence to incriminate any of the influential MRB and PA officers whom they suspected of fraud. So they basically were just fishing. They were just trying to get them caught up, trying to get them shut down.
Right.
Post Office Department took action when it presumed. See, that's how they try to get you caught up on mail fraud. That's what I'm not going to read it. Said they did all kind of stuff trying to get them caught up on mail fraud. And they issued on September 20, 1899, Barrett issued a fraud order against the MRB and PA and his national officers, Dickerson, and all those other folks in-house, forbidding the delivery of all mail matter and the payment of money orders. Check this out. Once the mail was intercepted, it was either returned to senders marked fraudulent or simply withheld from the intended recipients. The fraud order and destruction of mail proceeded even though the post office had no concrete evidence that the association had acted illegally. They were taking their money. They were sending the mail back, said fraudulent. They were just lying on them.
Crazy, man. Crazy.
Crazy.
This is like what I said on one of the other programs. We've been the targets of racial attacks in so many different forms consistently from slavery on forward, man, from slavery to the subprime mortgages, you name it, like it just never ever stopped. It never stopped. It just changes forms.
So there was also a Senate bill on that was trying to, it was mirroring the House bill, okay, for ex-slave pensions. I don't know, can I blow that up? I don't care, but it's called S1176. And I'm reading it here. It says to provide pensions for freedmen. What did it say? To provide a bill to provide pensions for freedmen and so forth. That's powerful. So when we talk about this language,
right.
This is language. This is stuff that the government was trying to do, but it was the efforts of the people, that same people and their sons, the sons and daughters of the Confederacy, who were thwarting all efforts for us to get justice. So that's why it's up to the sons and daughters of the freedmen to make sure we get justice.
Talk to him.
So, they threw this brother Dickerson in jail, or they tried to anyway. They found him guilty of swindling in the city court in Atlanta, Georgia. It said the press reported that he would have to pay $1,000 fine or be sentenced to 1 year on the chain gang. The conviction was overturned later that year by the Georgia State Supreme Court, which reasoned that in order to be convicted of swindling, Dickerson would have had to have claimed that an ex-slave pension bill had passed and become law, or that an appropriation had been made to pay pensions, and not simply that he was advocating for the passage of pension legislation.
This is insane. This is insane. They actually tried to criminalize him for advocating for the passage of a pension bill. This is crazy.
So let's see what Callie House did. It says, after Congress responded so unfavorably to the pension movement, House took the issue to the courts. In 1915, the association filed a class action lawsuit in the federal court for a little over $68 million. This is in 1915 against the U.S. Treasury. Somebody go into the inflation calculator and type in 1915 to see how much $68 million would be in 2021. And put that in the chat, please. The lawsuit claimed that this sum collected between 1862 and 1868 as a tax on cotton was due the appellants because the cotton had been produced by them and their ancestors as a result of their involuntary servitude. Basically, it's saying, look, y'all collected this revenue off of the tax on the cotton, and we made the cotton, we produced it, and we was enslaved. So so you owe us that. You owe us that. So So after basically they threw it out. What did they say? Is it was a Johnson versus McAdoo cotton tax lawsuit, and is the first documented African American reparations litigation in the United States on a federal level. Predictably, the Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia denied their claim based on governmental immunity, and the U.S. Supreme Court on appeal sided with the lower court's decision. And after that, you know, they pretty much went at her. They went after her, and they what did they do? It says after prolonged investigation, House was arrested and indicted on charges of mail fraud. See, that's how they always try to get you on some mail fraud. But it says after a 3-day trial in September 1917, an all-white male jury convicted her of mail fraud charges, and she was sentenced to a year in jail at Missouri State Prison in Jefferson City. She was released from prison in August 1918, having served the majority of her sentence with the last month community. This movement against insurmountable odds pressed for the passage of pension legislation to no avail, but being labeled as fraudulent, especially by determined federal agencies, sealed its fate. So I'm going to stop there, but we had to share that with y'all to show you that the term freedman was a term that was applied to our ancestors, the ones that was enslaved, that was emancipated, and it was a long set of bills. It wasn't just during Reconstruction, it was post-Reconstruction, even when they were the ex-slave pension bill that the term freedman and was applying to our ancestors and us, the descendants. So, like, again, just like the sons and daughters of the Confederacy fought to deny us justice and to block every effort to bring us reparations, the sons and daughters of the freedmen today have the charge of bringing the justice to get justice for our ancestors today in these days and times.
That's right.
That's right.
So, family, we are at the 2-hour and 21-minute mark. You already know what time it is when you come to BTP. Be the Power, classes in session, Freedmen University. You already know. I want to make an announcement. We're going to do our first book club, and I want to do this book first. You know, naturally, we're going to always do Dr. Darity, From Here to Equality. I mean, we've covered a lot of that book on our platform for those that don't know, but we're still going to make a book club out of it. But I wanted to do this book first for a specific reason, because this thing is a powerful it's a powerful strategy, and it speaks to some of what we touched on tonight about these lands being these are our lands. These are our lands, the lands of our ancestors. And we were never justly or fairly compensated for them. We want to announce this for March 31st, you know, and that, you know, that's the date, March 31st, family. Make sure y'all get the book. I mean, naturally, we're going to try to reach out to Charles Blow and see if he would do it, come through. You know, we got some haters. They're going to be trying to be like, hey, don't rock with them guys. But we got some screenshots of what the opposition is going to say already, just in case. You know, we got some screen grabs of some people that's dissing this man, Charles Blow. But anyway, this particular book right here, this strategy is, I mean, it's an unlikely source, in my opinion, for such a manuscript, a Black Power manifesto by Charles M. Blow, like the liberal writer for the New York Times. I don't know if he's a staffed writer. I'm not necessarily sure, but I've read several of his articles before, and he says it about himself. You know, people view him as a liberal democratic shill, et cetera, et cetera. So this book right here was shocking. I'm not gonna lie. It shocked me. I didn't expect it. I expected what the high quality information from Dr. Dougherty and A. Kirsten Mullins in their book, right? I didn't expect this. And that's why it was a shock. It was surprising to me. And yes, the Universal Mike, it is definitely a well-researched book, man. And it's not a voluminous tome, it's not a heavy read at all. It's not a large book. It's a nice size book. You could get through it in a week. You can get through it in a week unless you're like me. I gotta research every little thing, and but it is what it is. So March 31st, family, that's gonna be on a Wednesday. We're gonna do this book, The Devil You Know. And let me just give you some backdrop about the book. Charles Blow has devised this strategy about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Josh, where he says if at least 22% of blacks from the North move to the South, we would at the minimum control 12 Senate seats. And he speaks to how impractical it sounds, right? But the logic, the reasoning, it cannot be denied. It just cannot, it cannot be denied. So March 31st,
he was saying that it's 44% of 44% of our population is outside of the South. So if just half of that, which is 22%, come back, then we would be able to have the voting power via the populace as an advantage to gain power in congressional seats, in the Senate seats. Man, that's just a powerful. I mean, think about governors, senators, House
That's
reps,
right.
state legislators, and other positions that really reshape.
Mm-hmm. He my bad. He just touches on so much. Me being a Northerner, a New Yorker, he hit on some things that may, like, I'll just share where he speaks about in the South is more about family, legacy, and tradition. Where in the North, we don't necessarily have that. Everything is fast-paced, fast-moving. For many of us, our family and legacy starts right there in New York City, those of us that are in New York City. And you add the infusion of immigrants and different cultures, there's so much to see outside of the South. And as I'm reading it, I'm thinking about how a true merging of that, it's like hip hop, right? Hip hop started in New York City and it spread. And what we got was a sound that spread across the whole United States of America, eventually the world. But speaking of our people in the United States specifically, we were able to use this medium of hip hop, of being a wordsmith, to merge our shared experiences and tell it from a different story. And at times, once us New Yorkers got out of our New York bias, enjoy the sounds from West Coast and Midwest and Southern rappers. You see, that was the feel that particular passage put me in. So March 31st is definitely where it's at, man. Highest actual number of blacks is in the New York City area. Now, he touches on that, sister, right? But there's so many other people in New York in general, not just New York City, but the whole state, that number is kind of small in relative comparison to everybody else. It's a deep study, man. It's a deep study. So
yeah, and another thing is, you got to understand, like, New York City is a place where a lot of other people that came from like the Caribbean and places like that came, and they first. So when you say black, a lot of those people may not necessarily have a connection of coming from people who were fleeing from the Jim Crow South. They may have been coming to America and came to New York first from something else in another country. So you know, but either way, like the thing I like about what he's saying is like, man, it's just we gonna get into it. I don't
Yeah,
want
we
to
gonna get
let the
into it.
cat
We
out of
gonna
the
get
bag,
into
man.
it.
But it's just
Definitely.
powerful. Everybody get this book, man. It's definitely worth a read, and I would like us to have a discussion around it. And you know, hey, if anybody wants to have even some private discussions about some things you're reading, hit us up. You know, if you people that are in contact with us or whatever, just hit us up on the inbox, and we can kind of build, like, because I think this is a very, very intriguing book, that the concepts and the ideas in here, man, is something we really need to explore. We really need to take a hard look at it, and even build upon what he's saying in the book. So I look forward for us to have the book club discussion.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And oh man, tomorrow night, family. I mean, excuse me, not tomorrow night. On the 8th of, let me make sure. Let me see. Do I have this flyer here? I got to pull up one more flyer. We are interviewing.
Oh yeah.
We will be interviewing Dr. Norris Shelton. I don't have that flyer on my PC. I thought I did. Let me see. We will be interviewing Dr. Norris Shelton. No, I don't have it on my PC. We will be interviewing the founder of the DOAS movement. That is the movement where Yvette Carnell, Antonio Moore, and Dr. Cosby stole the concept from the man in Louisville, Kentucky. And that's gonna be on the 8th. Let me pull that up for everybody as well. So we got a powerful lineup. Our brother Logic, as we showed earlier, he's going to be having a debate on the 7th. Okay, what in the world did I do? Stop screen.
He's debating a panty. The panties are all in a bunch, man. They all in a bunch.
Yo, so we're gonna Dr. Logic, our brother Logic, Dr. Logic Supreme will be debating a Pan-African, and that is gonna be hilarious. I already know it. They just have no argument at all. So make sure y'all are there. We have a powerful lineup going on. We have some things moving. Okay, I don't know what I did wrong. I opened up the wrong screen, but anyway. Anyway, it's 2 hours and 30 minutes, and thank all of you for coming through. I don't know. We might do a little pop-up tomorrow. I might want to touch on some more of this Freedmen information, particularly the slave pension bill and Cali houses. What seemingly COINTELPRO before COINTELPRO treatment. Right. We may want to touch on that again. So, you know, tune in, family. Again, make sure you subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Hopefully, our other original channel will be back up soon. I don't know what's going on. We have went through everything with YouTube. We're not even getting responses back at this moment. We got a copyright strike from a person that owns no copyrights, particularly anything that we use. We couldn't find Antonio Moore's name in the copyright records unless Josh found something more recently. We couldn't find anything. So it is what it is. It is what it is. Bob Sanders says that pension bill definitely needs more discussion. Yes, it does. And we are going to do that. So I'll leave y'all with the motto of the platform, which is don't just fight the power, become the power, and then you will have the power to make a change. And with that, I say peace.